Bienvenue à toutes et à tous dans l'invité de Financial Afrik qui reçoit aujourd'hui pour vous, Monsieur Samuel Munzele Maimbo, l'un des candidats en course pour la présidence de la Banque africaine de développement. Alors, Monsieur Maimbo, bonjour. Donc, avant de rentrer dans le vif du sujet, nous aimerions que vous nous dites qui êtes-vous et quel est votre parcours professionnel jusqu'à ce jour.
First of all, thank you very much for having me in Dakar in Senegal. I love coming here. The food is great, the music, the art. It's always a pleasure to come back here. Look, I am running for the presidency of the Africaine Bank because I have been in development for over 30 years. I grew up on a farm in Zambia. That's when I fell in love with agriculture and development as a whole. I spent the greater part of my career working in the financial sector, trying to make finance work for Africa. In recent times, I've worked at the World Bank, spending many years working right here on the continent, living in Mozambique, working from Cairo to South Africa, working on different parts of the financial system. I've joined this race out of love and concern for my continent. Love because I have never been more confident about the future of Africa. We have the youngest people, we have the best land, we've got the best food and music. But at the same time, I'm very concerned at the fact that the geopolitics has changed, the environment has changed, there's a lot that has changed, but we are not changing and growing at a pace that's fast enough to create the types of jobs that we need in Africa.
Donc, je le disais tantôt que vous êtes l'un des 5 candidats dans la course à la présidence de la Banque africaine de développement. Qu'est-ce qui vous a motivé à vous présenter à la présidence de la Banque africaine de développement?
My primary motivation is the opportunity to use the skills that I have developed over many years on the continent. I want to spend the rest of my development career 100% of the time working in Africa. The reality is that Africa has enough plan. We have a group of leaders, even right here in Senegal, who know what needs to be done. What they need is help to make sure that they can implement. Let's focus on results. Let's focus on improving our systems and processes. Those are the skills that I have developed over the many years that we need. Africa needs significantly more financing than it currently has. On an annual basis, Africa needs about $400 billion. That's a significant amount. But this is work that I have done for many years. And I want to take all of those skills and make sure that they're devoted to developing this continent. We have fantastic opportunities in traditional sectors like agriculture, but even in the more creative sectors like film, music, and industry. That's what motivates me to join this race.
Alors, vice-président du budget, de l'évaluation des performances et de la planification stratégique à la Banque mondiale, vous avez également fait d'autres institutions financières internationales. Alors, en quoi votre expérience vous prépare-t-elle à ce poste?
This position prepares me significantly, as do the other 3 positions I've held recently, which was Chief of Staff for 2 World Bank presidents, being Director for IDA. What this job has done for me is reinforced the focus on 4 things that are required in Africa. 1, to be very clear about the purpose and function of the African Development Bank. It is supposed to be facilitator-in-chief, syndicator-in-chief, focused on deals and transactions. Secondly, working in my current role, I am a plumber. I fix problems. I fix things. Whenever you hear that there is a problem anywhere in the world, whether there's been a coup, a flood, an earthquake, my office receives that phone call. And what it has taught me is that if you want to change systems, you don't negotiate the documents. You negotiate the value that you want to get. In my current role, we had a budget process that was 9 months. We had a budget document that was 200 pages. We got that down to 3 months and 20 pages. That's the plumbing experience that I have. But even more importantly is the idea of partnership. In the world that we live in, this is not a job for one man. It's not a job for one institution. I have always developed partnerships with other multilateral institutions, and that's what I want to do at the African Development Bank. There is no room for competition. the challenges we have in the continent are bigger than one institution, and I want to focus on partnership. And then finally, I invest in staff all the time. The size of my current team is 600 people. I have spoken to 550 of them individually, 30 minutes each. What's working for them, what's not working, and what do they want to focus on. These are the 4 skills that I will bring to the African Development Bank just to make sure that the African Development Bank is managed as a world-class, top-tier institution, because that's what Africa needs.
Alors, parlons à présent de votre programme. Quels sont les grands axes de votre programme pour la BAD?
My number one goal is to focus on growth. As long as we're not growing above 5% for 5 years, then we toil in vain. 5 years from now, we'll still be talking about 600 million people without access to power. We'll be talking about 85% of our kids unable to read. These are challenges that require us to grow significantly. Now, how do we achieve growth? We go sector by sector. We ask and deal with the hard questions that we must deal with. In agriculture, why are we still importing $50 billion worth of food? Whenever we do that, we are literally shoveling money from Africa and taking it outside the continent. We need to trade with each other. We need to buy food from each other. In order for us to do that, we must tackle the difficulty of trading across our borders. I am really excited about the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. It's the largest trading bloc in the world. But we do not have 10 years to bring down the tariff. Not with the conversations coming out of Washington today. We have to bring down those tariffs tomorrow, today. That would be a primary focus. But I also want to make sure that in the spirit of making sure our domestic private sector is working and working well, we must deal with the problem of infrastructure. We must deal with the challenge of energy. I am really delighted that Senegal is leading the way in terms of clean energy and universal access. These are the examples we must export to the rest of the continent. But as we look for jobs, we must also be willing to try new things. The sporting industry, the film industry, next door in Nigeria, they have revenues of $600 million from films alone. That's 10% of foreign exchange reserves. I was in Morocco just yesterday, and I've been amazed to see how their cinema industry is bringing real revenue. A lot of the Hollywood blockbusters like Gladiator, which is my favorite film, are filmed in Morocco. In Egypt, they were making films in the 1800s. In Ethiopia, we had film stars coming to film there. These are industries that take a large number of young people with different skill sets. So in summary, my number one goal is growth. My strategy is going sector by sector, asking difficult questions, fixing the plumbing, and also being willing to try something different. We have to grow this economy much faster, especially in light of the challenges we have around climate, around debt, around a host of other geopolitical issues that we have today.
Alors, la Banque africaine de développement est connue pour la pierre qu'elle apporte dans la construction du développement de notre continent. Quelles sont les innovations ou encore les changements que vous envisagez d'apporter à la Banque?
At the bank, I want to start off with representation. It's really important. It makes a huge difference when the leadership team looks like the continent we serve. That's what I will start with. The second is making sure that the African Development Bank is listening to what is happening on the continent. I will have a youth council that will make sure that our young people have a voice directly into the leadership of the bank. I'll have a private sector council to make sure that our ambitions are large and significant. Thirdly, I will make sure that we are organized in a manner that makes it easier for our partners to work with us. That means having centers of excellence around private sector development, infrastructure, energy, so that when a private firm from outside the continent wants to invest in energy on the continent, they don't have to visit 15 countries looking for one deal. They will come to one place and they will find all of the information that they have. Fourth, I'm going to strengthen our ability to syndicate. Frankly, I am tired of attending conferences where we talk about plan and then conclude with a resolution to meet again to discuss. If we meet, it must be to do deals. We must strengthen that capacity. The word bank in African Development Bank should mean exactly that. We should run it the same way we run a bank, with a balance sheet that we are dedicated on a daily basis. Importantly, I want to make sure that our pipeline for talent starts with our young people. The Young Professionals program must reflect the diversity of our continent. It must ensure that the staff on the program are working in other multilateral institutions to gain the type of experience that puts partnerships in their DNA. So these are just some of the initiatives that I will work with, that I will make sure that are implemented at the African Development Bank from day one. This means a leadership team that can speak with me in multiple sectors, because as I said at the beginning, this is not a job for one man. It's not a job for one institution. We must focus every single day on implementation, on execution and result.
Alors, c'est vrai que vous avez déballé les grands axes de votre programme, mais quelle vision avez-vous pour l'avenir de l'Afrique avec la BAD sous votre direction?
So, the future is bright. What we need are three things to make sure that the African Development Bank is playing its rightful role. The first one is we need to scale up the ambition of all of our programs. When you think about what happened at the end of World War II, there was a Marshall Plan which was aggressive, which touched on every single aspect of the economy. We need to have larger, ambitious plans for this continent. The little band-aids we have in many segments and many sectors will not be enough. The number one, ambition. The second is we must invest in African knowledge, because there is a lot that we are losing out today, especially as the world becomes a much more digital economy. You and I have played around with ChatGPT. We love the fact that you can get a response in seconds. But these large language models do not have any African languages embedded in there. There is no Swahili, there is no Lozi, there's no Setswana. We need to make sure that the African Development Bank is in the forefront of finding these. So I want to make sure that we have a chief economist who is dedicated to promoting African knowledge. But in addition to that, it's making sure that we have large ambitions, we have invested in knowledge. The final part is about advocacy, raising the voice of the African Development Bank on some of the most difficult issues we have today, on climate, making sure that the climate financing that we need is available for us to implement the changes we need. On debt, we make sure that in addition to working on sovereign debt, we tackle the outstanding issue of domestic debt, finding ways that in partnership with the Paris Club and other debt clubs, the African Development Bank is taking ownership and leadership in bringing us all together to tackle some of these challenges.
En parlant du leadership, comment votre leadership pourra-t-il influencer le développement économique et social de l'Afrique?
The same way I have worked in many years across the globe. Whether I was working in Afghanistan throughout the war, whether it was Somalia, whether it was South Sudan, in some of the most difficult places on this continent, but also in some of the bright spots that we've worked on. Implementing change takes time. And as far as I'm concerned, I have already started the process. Over the last 6 months that I've been campaigning, I've been meeting with policymakers, young people, the private sector, making sure that the vision that I put forward for the African Development Bank is a shared vision for everyone. The second element is about transparency, being absolutely clear. Throughout my career, if you speak to people that I work with, they will tell you one thing. Sam is comfortable about what he knows and what he doesn't know. I have no ego learning from others and working in partnership to make sure that the impact we're having is significant. The final part I will stress is that all development is local. Development is not something that you fly in from somewhere else and say, now you develop. It's partnership. It's working in villages, spending time in rural areas. One of the aspects of the development course that I took had us actually living in villages to make sure that we understood what we were looking at. And that's the approach I want to take. I want to make sure that the African Development Bank is not seen as something that is separate. And this is one of the strengths that we have at the African Development Debt, we have offices in a large number. It is the most local development institution on the continent. And that's what we will focus on, the last mile of development.
Alors, vous êtes le candidat soutenu par la SADC, mais nous comprenons que l'Afrique du Sud ne soutient pas votre candidature. Alors, comment gérez-vous cette divergence au sein de cette communauté régionale?
So, to be clear, I am the official candidate for the SADC region. And this was reinforced when we met recently at the African Union, and there was a press conference with the chair of SADC reinforcing that statement. But with these regional bodies, I've never taken their endorsement for granted. I have continued to work with every single country. That's the same approach we took when we went to the larger organization of COMESA and got the endorsement of the COMESA regional body as well. These two bodies provide me a platform that demonstrates the resonance or the agreement and support with the vision that I have outlined for them. But I fully understand that this is a race, it's a competition. And so it is inevitable that there will be some countries that take a different view. That doesn't worry me at all, because this will always be and should always be a battle of ideas, a battle of whose vision will take this continent the furthest with the greatest impact in the shortest possible time. And that's what I've put across the table. And that is what has been reinforced and restated with clarity from the SADC Secretariat. And I'm sure they will be happy to respond to any questions about where SADC is.
Alors, quelle stratégie adoptez-vous pour unifier les membres de la SADC et assurer un front commun?
So the strategy that we have is focused on unifying the continent for selecting the best candidate out there. So since we had the endorsement in SADC, since we've had the endorsement in COMESA, I have been going country by country, meeting the private sector, government officials, young people, women's groups, to make sure that my vision is consistent with what Africa needs at this particular time. I make no distinction as to whether there are other candidates in the race, whether there are differences in the process. This is one of the reasons I have come to Senegal out of full respect of the fact that Senegal has a candidate. This is not about individuals. This is about the continent and the best ideas we have, which is why I'm focusing on making sure that we are ambitious with our goals, making sure that in this environment, we're not taking 18 months to make a decision, that we are working as in full partnership of all of the African financial institutions, and finally, that we are investing in our young people who are desperate for change. They are creative, they're working hard. They have no time for bureaucracy. They don't have any time for politics. And that's the passion that I bring to this table.
Alors, avant d'aborder la dernière question, vous le disiez tantôt au début de l'émission que vous avez été conquis par la culture sénégalaise, notamment le paysage, l'art culinaire. Alors, pourriez-vous nous en dire un peu plus sur votre présence au pays de la Teranga?
There are three reasons why I'm in Senegal. The most important one is out of respect of the Senegalese people. You cannot talk about development in Africa without Senegal at the table. It is a significant player in the region. There are a lot of things that have been accomplished here, whether it is in energy, whether it is in oil, whether it's in the private sector development. This is an old and rich history, and out of respect for that, I am here. The second point is, out of respect for my brother Amadou Hot. He will always be my brother, regardless of the outcome of this trade. The only competitors that he and I have are poverty, inequality, and underdevelopment. That's what we're competing against. And I am here to make it clear to the people of Senegal, to the government of Senegal, that I respect their choice and decision. And because this is a process that involves several rounds, I want to make sure that at all stages, the government is clear about the choices that are on the table. And then thirdly, I'm here to enjoy the foods, to enjoy the music, to enjoy the art. I paint in my spare time, a lot of acrylic paint, but nowhere near as professional as I have been here in Senegal. And when it comes to the music, I love music for the value it brings, not only for entertainment, but this is actually important for Africa's development. When you think about the fact that some of these industries are $600, $500 million industries, we have a lot to do in order to make sure that Africa's voice is told in the culturally beautiful way we tell our stories. And that's the job of the African Development Bank.
Alors, pour finir avec vous, Docteur Maimbo, je vais tout simplement vous demander un petit exercice de fixer la caméra, de juste regarder la caméra et répondre à la dernière question. Quel message souhaitez-vous transmettre à vos membres de la BAD et aux populations africaines à l'approche de l'élection?
The simple story is that I am the child of two civil servants who brought me up on a farm. And the first years of my life taught me values and principles that I hold dear to this day. Being honest, being transparent, working hard, making sure that I am responding to all of the challenges as faithfully as I can. And most importantly, caring about other people, regardless of the privileges that you have. My commitment to this race is to make sure that every single day I'm working hard to make sure that our institution is managed as professionally as it possibly could be, that our governments are getting the support they need to finance the development they desire for their people, and finally, that this continent breaks the cycle of debt and aid and finally gets onto a sustainable path of growth and prosperity.
Alors, merci beaucoup, Docteur Samuel Munzele Maimbo. Je rappelle que vous êtes l'un des candidats en cours pour la présidence de la Banque africaine de développement. Merci de vous être prêté à notre jeu de questions-réponses et surtout bonne chance pour la suite.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci également à vous d'avoir été des nôtres. C'est tout pour l'invité de Financial Afrik d'aujourd'hui. Portez-vous bien, à la prochaine.